So again, welcome. This is our webinar on the new DHIS2 software versions. My name is Max. I'm working with DHIS2 in Oslo, and I'm joined by some of my colleagues today. We have Scott, who's going to talk about analytics, Marcus, who's going to be talking about Tracker, Marta, who will go through the new Android version, and then Shurajit, who will talk about the COVID packages. And again, this is about DHIS 2.34 and Android Capture app version 2.1. And it's great to see so many people joining us today. So I'm just going to post one thing in the comment section, which is a link to the Q&A thread. So we would ask you if you have questions or comments during this, that you post them in that thread on the community of practice. And we'll respond to them either during this presentation or immediately after. If we have time at the end of this webinar, we will go back and try to answer some of them live, especially if it's something that we can demonstrate. But that would be the place to do it. So if you start posting questions in the chat, we'll just ask you to direct yourself to the community of practice to ask those. And that's it for me. So I'm going to turn it over to Scott, who will give you a walkthrough of analytics features.
Great, thanks, Max. Let me just start sharing my screen here. Okay, so before we get into the features, I just wanted to take a second and introduce everyone to all of the 234 resources that we have. With every release, we generate quite a mountain of resources, and we want to make sure that these are available to all of you, or at least you know where to find them. For the full release notes, this details all the new functionalities within the release, as well as any kind of upgrades, things that you need to be aware of. You can find those with the links, the first two links here. We also produce feature spotlights for all of the new functionality within DHIS2. Relatively short, simple videos. You can find those on our YouTube channel, the link's there. If you want to see any of the functionality that we're going to demo during this webinar, or if you just want to play around with DHIS2 at any point, you can always go to our demo instance. It's play.dhis2 play.dhis2.org /2.34. There's also several other demo instances linked there as well for previous versions. Of course, we have all of our documentation at dhis2.org /documentation. These are user documents, user manuals, developer guides. All of that is updated for each release. You can, of course, download the DHIS2 to deploy to your server through the download link. Upgrade notes, if any of you are planning to upgrade to version 2.34, you can find the upgrade notes there in our GitHub link. There's also a link to the community of practice where Max dropped a link in for that, where we'll be doing any Q&A for this call. And of course, you can find the complete overview of all of the tickets, all of the JIRA tickets that were completed for 234 with the link there. So with that, what we're actually going to do, I think most of us are going to switch over to a live demo. So everybody wish us luck. Live demos are always a little dangerous. I need to... Okay. So now I'm in the demo instance that I just shared the link to, play.dhis2.org /2.34.0. And here we're looking at the 234 dashboard. For those of you that are used to the dashboards or have used DHIS2 for a while, you probably see quite a few things here that immediately stand out to you as being new. The first few things are that within each dashboard item, the title is now able to wrap. In previous versions of DHIS2, if you had a long title for your dashboard item, it would be cut off. That's no longer the case, so you can make your titles as long as you want. And to give each dashboard item more room for its title, we've added a 3-dot expansion menu here for the other dashboard items that are available. So if I click here, I see that I have two new items options here. I can open in the data visualizer or show the interpretations. If I click on a different dashboard item, like this bar chart, then I can see that I have additional options. So view as a table. So if I just click that, it goes to a pivot table. View as a map. Of course, it renders here as a map. And then I can also open it as the data visualizer or go to the interpretations. These are the same as they were in previous releases. A couple of new dashboard items are also clearly seen here. The first one is that for our dashboard single value data item, you are seeing the color of the actual value in the dashboard item changing. This is based upon a legend. So now you're actually able to apply legends to single value items. And the same actually goes for our gauge charts. So in previous versions of gauge charts, the color was always just this bright green color. But now you can actually apply a legend to gauge charts, as well as put in base and target lines, as you see here, which makes the gauge charts much more practically useful. There's a couple of other things here that you're probably seeing that's standing out to you. Down here, if we look at our maps, you see that we're actually now showing donut clusters for our maps. What we're actually looking at right now is an event layer, and that event layer is disaggregating the events in that layer by certain attributes, details. So here we're actually seeing the age in years for each event on the map. Well, actually, it's for each malaria patient that's been registered on this map. So let's just go in and explore some of the new functionality in the event visualizer. Or sorry, not the event visualizer, the data visualizer app. So what I can do is click on my expansion, and I can say Open Data Visualizer app. And you'll notice that it opened in a new tab. I still have my dashboard available, but I also have the tab open for the Data Visualizer app. So here in the Data Visualizer app, the big thing that's been added is the inclusion of pivot tables as a visualization type. So now all of the pivot tables app has been merged into the Data Visualizer app. So if I click on pivot table, click update, you now see that I am left with just a single value pivot table. Of course, the legend is still applied. Now let's make this a little bit more interesting. If I now then go to my dimensions panel on the left side and look in your dimensions, then I am able to see some dimensions here that have a green dot next to them. In many instances of DHIS2, certainly national deployments of DHIS2, we see that there are many predefined dimensions that have been added, sometimes dozens. The issue, of course, is that the users don't always know if these dimensions could be applied to the data that they have selected. Well, now DHIS2 will tell you that for you. So the green dot here, if I hover, you'll see that it says dimension recommended with selected data. That means that this dimension can actually be turned on for the data that's been selected. So here, if I take facility type and let's say drag this into rows, then I have to turn on my facility types. Let's just select all of these, turn them on. And my pivot table will go ahead and update with breaking down my data to my facility types. Let's make it a little bit more interesting and add org units back over to our rows. Let's change our org units so that they are showing subunits. These will show the districts in Sierra Leone. And now you see each district being broken down by the facility type and its corresponding value here. We can make it even a little bit more interesting by saying, let's add the last 12 months. Let's add our periods over to data, make our table a bit bigger. So now the last 12 months, all of our districts, all the facility types, and let's add a few more districts. So let's also show the subunits times 2. All right, so now we have quite a large pivot table, and as you can see, as I'm scrolling, it's actually rendering in real time. This actually dramatically improves the performance of the pivot table. And in fact, in the new, by having pivot table in the Data Visualizer app now, we're actually able to increase ×3 the number of cells that are supported in the pivot table. So we can actually have massive, massive pivot tables now. So we're talking about in the billions of cells, larger than what Excel can handle. Okay, so please, I know this is a very large change to many DHIS2 deployments. The pivot table is by far the largest used analytics app. By merging it over into the data visualizer, hopefully you can appreciate that it has a much cleaner user experience and much more intuitive to build a pivot table. but it also makes dramatic performance improvements, as I mentioned. Of course, it does mean that the old pivot tables app will no longer be supported. Well, there will be no new features added to it, and it will still be supported for 2 more releases in terms of fixing bugs. But after those last 2 releases, then I think that would be DHIS 2.36. We will no longer support the classic pivot tables app. So I strongly encourage you to go ahead, start using the pivot tables in the data visualizer. That's going to be where DHIS2 is going to present pivot tables from here on out. If I move back to the dashboard now, I'd like to take you just quickly into some of the improvements that you see in the Maps app. The first thing that we've added in the Maps is on the dashboard itself, we have a full screen viewer. So if I click here on the full screen, you'll see that it takes up my entire screen. And one of the major improvements with Maps is the implementation of WebGL. And this WebGL technology improves the performance dramatically. So you can see right here, I'm looking at about 10,000 tracked entities or events on a map. And as I zoom in, you see that the donut clusters are disaggregating themselves. There are no zoom levels, and I continue to zoom in until I start to see individual events. This may look a little bit less smooth as you're viewing it here, but you can take my word for it that it is an extremely smooth process now. This is a significant improvement, especially for low bandwidth settings. I'm going to exit out of the map now and the full screen view, and I'm just going to go straight into the map app. So here in the map app, a few things have been added. The first one is on the left panel. You can see that we have some new base layers. And specifically, we now, by default, include the Bing aerial base layers. This is because Google changed their license and we are no longer able to use Google Maps. But actually, Bing does have some advantages over Google. It actually has better resolution in many parts of the world, better labels on some of their maps, and they are much more freely available to use for applications like DHIS2 in terms of their licensing. Okay, so now we're zooming into a map. Zooming into Freetown, you see the roads are starting to populate. Now let's go in and change this events layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to style. This is the only thing that's changed. And instead of age in years, let's just change this to gender. This gender is an attribute of, is a data element that's captured in this event capture program. So now we see, instead of the age, we see the genders. The male are blue, female are orange. Of course, you can change the color to be whatever you want. So I'm zooming into Freetown. And one cool feature that we have now is the ability to tilt the map. So if I come over to the right side, there's the tilt icon, and I can start to tilt the app around. I can continue to zoom in, and I can almost actually kind of fly over the country and see where each individual, coming down to a lower level, and I can kind of fly over the country and see each event. Okay. I also just want to point out very quickly how to make sure that you know how to style the single value and gauge charts. So I'm going to go back into my data visualizer app. I'm back here on the dashboard. I'm going to go into this gauge chart that has a legend applied. And the options menu for each of each visualization type changes based upon the type that you selected. So the gauge menu is different than the pivot tables option menu, for example. So if I click on the options menu for this gauge chart, you see if I go to the Legends tab, I have my Legends options here. These legend options are the same for pivot tables, single value, and gauge charts. I can select a predefined legend. This predefined legend is based upon what you have assigned that data element or that indicator in the maintenance application. Of course, you can select another legend if you'd like. I've just changed it quickly here. So you can apply whatever legend you want. If you want to change the target and baseline for gauge chart, that's also in the options menu under the data tab. So you can see I can toggle those on and off, change the values, and you see it's reflected on the data visualizer app. Okay, so this is quite a crash course of all the new functionality that's been added. I do strongly encourage you to go through the release notes, take a look at those in detail, and please don't hesitate to ask me if you have any questions. I'll be monitoring the community of practice for the rest of the demo here, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. So with that, I will hand it over to Marcus, who will start to take us through the new functionalities in Tracker.
Thanks a lot, Scott. I'm starting my sharing now, and I trust you will let me know if you can see my screen now, or if you can't see my screen rather. Yeah, this is the Tracker portion of the presentation. I am going to talk about features that is mentioned in the release notes that Scott also mentioned in the beginning. So I encourage you to go and read more about the features there. There is links to screenshots, to demos, and to documentation for these features. So you should look into the release notes. For 2.34, this release for Tracker has been mostly about we are doing some longer term work for integrating the Tracker functionality into the Capture app. So we will have one app for capturing all types of data. This is a bit of a longer project, but it's been taking up some of our resources in 2.34. Apart from that, we have seen more and more Tracker installations scaling up, and we have seen more and more Tracker installations that is creeping into operationally critical functions, which puts more pressure on us to provide stability and performance in our releases. So in 2.34, we have had that focus with a lot of the release on stability and performance. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that now. Usually, as usual, we have a large portion of the release being bug fixes, and you can see a complete list if you go to the release notes and click the link there.
Yeah, Marcus, just to interrupt, I think we're seeing the wrong part of your screen, so we're just seeing your notes. Do you want to click the presentation?
Oh, thanks. Let me try to fix that. All right. Can you see my presentation now, Max?
Yes, that's good. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. So we have, as mentioned, we have the list of bug fixes as usual. We have improved the cache inside the Capture app so that it's more resilient. It's faster. It can it will work with larger amounts of data, and also there is now less situations where you need to go and use the cache cleaner because the cache will know that it needs to be updated. Another invisible change that we have made is that for the program rule engine, we are now parsing and running rules in the Antler engine, which makes the program rules a lot faster, and both for server and Android, the program rules are now faster, and it also opens up some nice opportunities in the coming releases for validating the program rule grammar and providing some more help to the users at writing program rules. The last kind of invisible enhancement we have made is the audit service enhancement. So now we see that for all types of data, we are now auditing all these operations by default. So when you install 234, there will be much more auditing going on than it was before. You also have new tools to configure and turn off auditing. So I encourage you to look at the documentation for this and selectively turn off auditing in case you don't need to audit some of these object types, and these are taking up a lot of space in your instances. I want to highlight one little change that we have done in the tracker, which might seem like a detraction of functionality. Some larger instances have seen one or two queries particularly heavy, and that is the count that you have seen on the front page of the tracker. This number here that says the total number of cases in the program, and the total number of pages at the bottom here on the pager are actually eating an enormous amount of resources on bigger servers. So what you will find now is that we have removed these two numbers, and the pager is working a little bit differently without the total number of pages visible. So for anyone who needs this count, they would have to make a program indicator and/or a dashboard or a report to see the total number of cases. And this is for performance reasons, and it has a tremendous impact in bigger instances. One new important update that we have done that is also invisible until you start looking for it is the monitoring infrastructure. There is now hooks in the DHIS code that will allow a tool called Prometheus, service called Prometheus, to be installed and monitor the solution. The installation guide for Prometheus is linked to in the release notes as well. And on top of Prometheus, we have these graphs that we are seeing here in a visualization tool called Grafana. So now all installations of DHIS on 234 can easily be upgraded with these dashboards that will allow monitoring the server health. In the documentation, you will also find links to a GitHub repository with some tips on what the standard dashboard here are giving you, and what actions to take in case there is anomalies. One new tracker feature before I go to a little bit of a live demo. In the tracker relationships that we have been creating between tracked entity instances, it was not possible to search and find related entities from other organization units apart from the one you were registering data for. When we went into the COVID use cases and went into the countries, it was apparent that the use case for linking one tracked entity instance from another org unit to the current tracked entity instance was very central, and we therefore built this normal search diagram that you have, the normal search form that you have seen in Tracker Capture other places, also into the add relationship dialog here. So when you are adding a relationship, you can search across all your search org units in the same way that you search in other parts of the user interface. Okay, so the last part of the demo is that I'm going to give a little bit of a demo of a feature in the Capture app. Let's see if I can share my screen in the right way. Okay, so let me know if you don't see the Capture app now. You should see the Play 234 server and the Capture app on your screens. We have had the filters on the top here for a while, and for anyone using the Capture app, you know that these filters can be used for filtering the data in the list below. When you have no filter applied, you will see all the events for one org unit and one program, and also one category combination if you have categories for the program. There is now a new section on top here for predefined filters that users can save either for themselves or for all the users in the system or for other groups. So this user I'm logging in with now, he sees these three filters here, predefined views. And if I click this view here called events today, you can see the filters updating. And this is all events with report date today. If I were to change, for example, to this week, I will see more events. I could put a max age, let's say 17. And I could save this filter, save this view as this week. Now there is a new view here, currently only visible to me. And I can, this filter will be here next time when I log in to the solution. I could also share this with others. I can share it with the public, so that if I share it with the view for the public, then other users will also see this list. I could share it with specific groups and users if that's what I want, in the same way as dashboards. One use case that we know for this type of list and filtering is the working list or task use case. And you can see a little bit of a taste here. The events assigned to me could be a way of organizing single events in the form of tasks, where my user is now assigned to these two tasks. So that's why I see them here in the assigned to me task. Both the events assigned are active. Let us make another filter here that oh sorry, I already had the only active events assigned to me here. If I changed it to completed, you will see a different list. If I take away this filter, oops, you will see all the events, but seeing only active events might be a way of treating events as tasks. If I go to the other list here called events assigned to anyone, I could reassign this to myself, called tracker, and then I would see the event here in this list. Okay, this concludes my part of the presentation, so I would like to hand it to Marta to continue with the Android portion.
Thank you, Marcus. Hello, everyone. Let me just prepare my screen for sharing. Okay. So you should be seeing a slide saying the DHIS2 Capture app version 2.1. Sorry. So in this presentation / demo, we are gonna have an overview and a quick review of the new functionalities added to the 2.1 version. I also encourage you to read the release notes, which are as well available for Android, where you will find longer descriptions and links as well to the documentation and to screenshots. So just as a quick overview on the Android app, the Android app supports currently the 3 data models of the DHIS2. So you will find there either datasets, event programs, or tracker programs. They are displayed to the user using the same layout. They are framed as activities, so that is transparent to the user how the server is configured. And it also has a full offline support, meaning all the demo that you are going to see today and all the functionality will be working exactly in the same way if you did not have internet. And only the data that you collect will be stored temporarily and, well, will be stored locally until you have connection and then sync with your server. The Android app already has a visual configuration. You can assign icons and colors to your options in your option sets or to your data elements, which will allow you to configure your server for a more intuitive data collection process. The data collection flow is dynamic in the sense that it reproduces whatever you configure with your program rules. You can adjust the next question or the next probable offered answers based on the previous questions and answers of your user, which is something that you already can do for Tracker as well and for event programs using the program rules that are fully supported. The last highlight I want to make in this overview is the map view. It was added in the last version. You can view your data in a map either as GPS coordinates or polygons. You can also collect or render the polygon with your phone when you are entering the data. And moving now to what's new in 2.1, I want to start with the datasets. I'm going to try to combine demo with presentation. I hope the software does not fail, but it has been failing lately. Let's hope it works smoothly. Lately meaning 10 minutes ago. It worked well before. For datasets, the main improvement is that we have added the possibility to adjust the column, the width of your column, based on the length of your data element name. The problem was that previously, for data elements with long names, the names were cut, and there was no way to show them. This was highly requested, so I'm going to open a dataset now. And then it's going to load. This data set has sections and tables. So as you can see, you can, with these arrows here, you can adjust the width of your column that you may want differently based on how you are using the device. If we move to landscape mode, then maybe you can have more space. It's going to keep adjusting the height of the column as well, but the name will always be complete. And this works, the rest works as before. You can scroll and see the full table, and when it reaches the end, it's going to move to the next section. So you can adjust every section for whatever view it's more comfortable for the user. And this configuration that I'm leaving now, it's going to stay there for the next time I come back to this data set. So I only have to do this once. And then we move to the next one, which is some improvements in data entry. The rendering of sections, we have changed it all over the app for events and for tracker events. And you can see now the sections differently that I will demo in a moment. They are listed one after the other, and you can also add notes to the event programs. That was not available before. And the error messages to the user, for instance, when you try to complete an event and you have some mandatory fields empty, it's going to tell you which ones are not available, which was not the case before. So this is what I meant before. Connection is being rejected by the phone sometimes. Okay. So to demo the sections, I'm going to use the, sorry, I didn't say it before, but for this demo, we are using the COVID-19 packages that the university has configured and released. So we are going to go to a COVID-19 cases event program. I'm going to create a new event. I'm in training land. Okay, so this is how the sections look now. This event program has 7 sections, and it's telling me we have 0 or 3 data elements entered on this one or this one. We can only have 1 section open at a time, so when we open the next one, the previous will close. Program rules, they apply as before. So this is a show hide program rule. We can change to calendar view if it's more comfortable. So let's say, yes, it was tested and it was positive. So for instance, here we are showing the case classification data element and assigning a value based on the previous answers. And then if I want to save now this event, it's going to tell me that I am missing some mandatory fields like the patient ID, sex, or age. I can stay save it, but I cannot complete because they are empty, as you can see. Okay, I didn't save that one. Go back to our presentation. And we are going to move now to tracker programs. The biggest improvement in the tracker programs is the possibility to display your events grouped by program stage. As you know, each tracker program can have different program stages, and those program stages can be repeatable. So before, I'm going to open the program. So for this one, I'm going to use the port of entry program. Okay. So I search for patient. I'm gonna, oh wait, and we lost the screen. And we are back. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to enroll a tracked entity instance to showcase this functionality. So for instance, the 1st of May. Okay, I'm not going to complete all the fields for this patient. It's gone again. One more and I give up. Okay. So I just wanted to see that if I add more events here, for instance, this program, for this program, the patient has to have follow-up daily during the first 15 days. So I'm adding those quickly here. I add a new event, another follow-up for the 2nd, the 3rd. I'm not adding any data, and we don't have mandatory fields. I'm going to add another one. No, I don't need another one. So this is how the events. You are not seeing. Sorry about that. This is how the events are displayed. Right now, they are ordered chronologically. And the new thing now is that we can group them by stage. So this is telling me that these are the 3 types of stages. We have 1 event in the registration because that one is not repeatable. We have 2 events as follow-up. Another difference now here is that to create a new event, I click here in this little plus button, and then it's asking me directly what to do because it knows in which program, in which event I am. So just for the sake of the use case for COVID, I will just show the relationships. This is not new, but just for the demo, you can add relationships. So this program is configured to add contacts. So here we can say that this person was a contact of this one, and then here we link the patients, and we can navigate from one record to the other. Okay, back to our presentation. The next functionality are the filters. Filters are available all over the app. And the only new thing that we have added here is that the filters are also in the tracked entity instance dashboard. So you can filter your events belonging to one tracked entity instance enrollment, and also the assigned to me filter, which will do as similar to what Marcus was demoing. It will show you only those either tracked entity instances or events that are assigned to the user that is logged in the app. And then the last one are the new rendering types. There are several new rendering types. Two of them are the QR code and the barcode. QR code and barcode are rendering types for data elements of value type text. So we configure as a normal data element of value type text, but then when we configure the program, we can say, render this as a QR code or render this as a barcode. And the same for datasets and Boolean yes/no data elements or yes only. You can configure those as radio buttons or checkboxes, either horizontal or vertical. So I'm gonna try for last time to show the phone just to demo this last functionality because it was highly requested before. And to demo this one, I'm gonna use the contact tracing program. So as you can see here in the search screen, for this demo, we have configured this program having both the QR code as a system-generated contact ID and the barcode for the local case ID. So we can, oops, I dropped the phone. I think it's the cable. I did something. Okay. So to use them for search, I'm gonna prepare here this barcode, and then I clicked on this on the phone. I render, and now we go back to our phone. So this is the ID of the user that I already rendered as generated a QR code for. So now I search, and this is the patient that I was looking for. So this is one use of the QR codes. And to assign a value to one of those, either the QR code or the barcode, we do the same. So I'm gonna go back to the phone. Like this. And then if we click here and render a barcode that is already generated, it's assigning that value to that specific field. So now you can search by that one as well. If we clear our filters, we can search as we did with the QR code. And I'm not gonna try to do that again because it's dropping. The last two I didn't demo, but you can render your option sets, your yes/no value types, or your yes/only data elements as either horizontal or vertical radio buttons and checkboxes. And just to link with our next section, during this presentation, I was using the COVID-19 metadata. If you want to test the app with your server or with this testing server that is prepared, you just have to download it either from Google Play or from GitHub, enter with these user credentials that we are sharing here. They are also posted on the website, and then just start playing and start adding your data and testing the app. And with this, I'm gonna hand over to Shurajit, who is gonna talk about the COVID packages and give us an update. Thank you.
Thanks, Marta. Just share my screen as well. Yeah, so I'm just going to give a brief update on the COVID-19 packages in terms of where we are at the moment and some of the planned updates that we're going to be implementing relatively soon. So you'll see this is also available on our website, but we've been slowly scaling up a number of operations in different areas of the globe where we have implementations scaling up the different kind of programs they're offering and different types of packages that they're working with within all the COVID-19 packages that we have released. We have quite a few countries that had initially expressed interest. We're up to about 64 at this point in time. And we have 27 that are kind of actively developing with plans to roll out the COVID packages in their own settings. And we have 17 that are actually fully operational at this point in time. So they're collecting data and actually using the package for various purposes in their own settings. There's been a number of very successful stories and learnings from these various implementations. We're trying to share these as best we can on the community of practice pages and on our website, where we have some posts about some of these innovations that are occurring in the field. There has been a lot of innovation occurring with the package, which is to be expected given the situation. A lot of modifications have been made to make the package work based on various contexts, etc. So we can post some links to those, but if you're already looking in the community of practice, that's a good place to also review where some of this is being shared. But we have gotten a lot of good feedback on the package itself, on how people are implementing this, and it's been a good kind of understanding in terms of what's actually happening out there. So we are seeing this now scale up in a number of countries, which is good to see as well. Sorry. Yeah. So I just wanted to talk about a couple additions that are occurring in the pipeline for the COVID packages. So the first one I'll talk about is a kind of update that will include commodities tracking. So this is actually a tracker program. I actually have it open here. This is going to be released as a tracker program that allows you to kind of update your stock on hand for various resources. You can see there's a, as with the other packages that we have, this is modifiable and can be, you can always add the commodities that you require. We try to start off with kind of an exhaustive list, at least once they're kind of, the included options that would be common. But these can be modified as required. And from this, we are planning a dashboard with a number of indicators that allow you to kind of track all these various supplies within, various facilities, etc., in your own setting as well. So that's planned for release quite shortly. We have most of it developed. We're just kind of working on the final touches for this, and that should be available soon. We've also been working quite a bit on contact tracing, and this is what we've been trying to work on a bit more is on the actual analysis of this data. Where we've seen the most kind of innovation is actually from partners in the field. So actually there's a number of kind of apps that have been created that supplement the tools within DHIS2, and there are quite a variety of different apps supporting various use cases out there right now. We're just trying to understand them and learn from them and see how we can share them. This one on the left side, this nice contact mapping that displays the various contacts in various degrees is actually made by one of our community members, Brian, who's posted this on the community of practice for anyone to actually demonstrate and try out. This is fully available. Sorry, I had it open. Okay, at the moment. Yeah, so this one is available for people to actually have a look at and provide feedback on. Can be very useful in actually following up on the contacts, as well as displaying network analyses, etc. We're also working on a DHIS2 app. So the app that I see here that my mouse is kind of hovering over, this is actually built using R, and it connects to DHIS2 externally, and it has a lot of powerful features as a result of that. We're also kind of looking at other apps that have been developed by the community. On the right side here, where my mouse is kind of hovering now, this is an app actually initially developed by the DHIS Sri Lanka team to kind of actually display their cases and also allowing you to kind of take you to each of the cases or contacts that are shown on this map. So this one I do have open. I can pull this up real quickly. So you can map quite a few contacts. It can become a little confusing, but as you start to zoom in, you can start to see individual information about these relationships. You can see it maps, multiple contacts if that is the case. And then, all of these are interactive. You can click on them and it allows you to kind of bring up their information, and you can go to their actual dashboard to kind of follow up on additional information about these contacts. So there's been a lot of community innovation regarding this. This is more something we're trying to cultivate, but HIS Sri Lanka and others, other HIS groups as well that have been working on a lot of these innovations for contact tracing. But we're trying to support kind of these two basic use cases that I've outlined here. So one is the actual visualization of this data, and the second is the actual follow-up of these contacts. So actually going and following up, assessing them, tracking them over time, and kind of enabling lists for doing work like this. And once again, I just did want to highlight that this is largely a community innovation that's been a result of actual implementations and needs from the community itself. And we're looking to see how we can kind of capitalize on all this innovation that's occurring and share some of these tools with others. And hopefully some more of these will be starting to, we'll start to make some of these available shortly as well. Also, as part of our planned updates to this package is a number of training templates. So we have guides, exercises, and job aids for the tracker data entry for case-based surveillance, contact registration and follow-up, port of entry screening. We have Android user manuals that cover all of our packages, all of our tracker programs, as well as the event surveillance and aggregate surveillance. And we're working on data analysis guides as well. There's a number of features that have been kind of more recently available that allow us to look at this case-based data in some interesting ways. So we're hoping to have these available shortly. All the data entry guides and the Android user manuals will be available this week. I can show you an example of them. They're template-based in the sense that we're really trying to make it so that you can replace the screenshots basically with your own kind of system. We understand that in most cases, the COVID package that we've released will be modified in some way to fit a local context, whether it be language or whether it be data elements or attributes or whatever it might be, whatever those localization needs that needed to take place have been. So we're trying to make these training templates generic enough that they can be applied to any system. This includes the trainer's guides as well, where there's basically notes to the trainers, etc., about what to do in certain scenarios if you've made a certain modification, etc. So the first part of these, the data entry guides and the Android user manuals, will be available later this week, and the data analysis guides should follow shortly after that. Yep, just for those of you who have been following along as well, we do have a number of these packages translated. So we have French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Russian available. And there are some additional languages that are in progress. But for those of you who are kind of interested in getting involved in this translation process, or maybe have some translation needs of your own and want to understand how to do that, we've put the kind of contact details in this presentation, and please make sure to contact us if this is something that you are kind of working with on your own implementation as well, as we'd be happy to hear about that and see how we can support you there. And so so this was just a very brief update. We have many resources devoted to COVID. So here are some of the list here where you can find this, find more resources available. In particular, our information page, DHIS2.org/COVID-19. This is kind of listing a lot of the key resources we have. This has also been translated to French, I believe. So for anyone in the French-speaking community, this is also available completely in French. This has the information page has links to all of our various resources, previous webinars, videos on the COVID package, basically all the resources that we've created. So for any more information on this please have a look at the website. But you can also contact us as well at covid@dhis2.org, and we're happy to follow up with you there anytime. And with that, I'll hand it over to Max to wrap us up.
All right, thanks, Georgia. So we have had a couple requests for additional demos during this. So first I'm going to turn it over to Scott, and he's going to do a data approval demo.
Right, thanks, Max. We certainly appreciate that data approval is a critical step in many workflows in countries around the world. And unfortunately, in DHIS 2.33, data approval was unintentionally dropped from the feature sets of that release of DHIS 2. But it has been reintroduced in DHIS 2.34. And so let me just go over quickly what it looks like now. It looks basically identical to how it did in older releases of DHIS 2, but the pathway to get to it is a little bit different. So here I'm looking at a dashboard of 2.31, 231. And so to get to data approval, I have to scroll down and go to the Reports app. And here you see data approval in the Reports app. The trusty old data approval app has been for probably the last 5 years or so. Here, if we switch over to DHIS 2.34, the latest release of DHIS 2, it is the exact same application, but it has just been moved. So now data approval is its own standalone app. You see it here. It's the blue circle with the red checkbox, or the red check in the white checkbox. So if I click on that, you see that the app, it looks identical to the app that was in the older versions of DHIS 2. So again, here's 2.31. Here's 2.34. Basically the same, and the exact same functionality is there as well. So the same workflow approval at higher levels, of the approval chain. For those of you who are not familiar with DHIS2 data approval, essentially what is going on here is that it allows system administrators to set approval levels before data can be viewed at higher levels. So for example, if data is entered at a facility level, maybe that data has to be reviewed and approved at district level before it can be viewed at national level. So then fortunately, again, that functionality was dropped in 2.33, but it has been reintroduced as its own application in 2.34. Again, if you have any questions about it, please post them in the community practice. We're more than happy to answer. Okay, back over to you, Max.
Right, thanks. And now we'll have Marta, and she's going to give a quick demonstration on data sync with Android.
Thank you, Max. To do that, because I'm a bit stubborn, I'm going to try to show the phone again. And hopefully it will not break for this short term. Okay. So the question was about synchronization and about syncing 5,000 tracked entity instances per org unit. I would say I would not recommend having a deployment in which you want to sync down to a device, to a mobile device, the 5,000 tracked entity instances. Sorry, I'm gonna get back here. I'm not sharing my screen. Okay, so I would not do that. It would probably be slow. We usually recommend to assign the mobile users to the low end in the hierarchy where they actually enter the data. Having that said, it is possible to configure what do you want to configure and what do you want to sync. So I'm gonna share screen now to show you where that is in the Android app. So let me share screen now. Okay, so you should be seeing the app now, or not. I think it's a combination of Zoom and the software, to be honest. Dun, dun. Okay. If it doesn't work, I explain it. Share my screen and make it bigger. So if you go here to settings, you can see that you can configure certain synchronization parameters. So you can say how many events you want to download to the app and how many tracked entity instances you want to download to the app. This limit will apply to the data that is synced down to the phone. You can store more tracked entity instances, but this is the limit for your syncing, how many you will download when you sync to get data. And you can also select if you want to apply this globally for all the configuration of your user, or if you want them to apply by org unit, meaning 500 tracked entity instances per org unit, or 500 tracked entity instances per program, or a combination of both, 500 tracked entity instances per org unit and program. This configuration we think is quite powerful to be in the hands of the end user. So we are moving this to a web app that will be published in the coming month. And then you will be able to configure your synchronization parameters globally for all your users and to say this cannot be changed in the device. If you don't want to use it, then it will show like this and the users will be able to configure. Regarding synchronization, you can also decide how often you want your app to sync to look for connection, because usually by default it stores locally, and then based on this parameter it will try to send the data and update the data from the server. For metadata, it can be daily, weekly, or manual. Manual, the user will have to trigger it, so this is useful for when you're testing. And for data, you can do it every 30 minutes, every hour, every 6 hours, 12 hours, every day, or again, manual. In addition to this, when you are using the app, you can sync without coming to these settings, which is more comfortable for the user. So the recommendation would be to set certain periodicity in those settings, and then here, explain your users that I'm gonna edit an event for demo purposes. So I'm gonna open this one and add something, then save it. So you can see now that this event is telling us that is offline, it's not synced. And if we go out, this program is telling us that this program has events that are not synced. So I can sync from here, clicking on the icon directly, or from here, and then sync. So now my event is synced, my program is synced. So this is what we called granular sync. And then the users, if it works with your workflow, can be told to sync every tracked entity instance when they finish entering, or similar use cases. Or they can sync every program before they start working in the program, or when they finish working on that activity. So I think that's all for, or I'm gonna stop sharing. That's all for the sync. I don't know if I forgot anything. There was another question about if this app would connect to any DHIS2 server, and yes, the app would connect to any DHIS2 server and download the metadata and the data that is assigned to the user that you are logging in with. So yeah, the answer is yes. And I think that's all from me, Max. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Marta. And so thanks to all of my colleagues who presented today, and to all of you in the audience for joining us. As I said before, we will be making this video available on our YouTube channel, so we'll share that soon after the event concludes. And I did post again the link to the Q&A in the community practice. So if you do have additional questions, please post them there, and the presenters will respond to them as soon as they can. And thanks again for joining us. I'm going to stop the recording and